there are varying degree of how much people are tried. Um, and gosh, my feeling about level, so I'm just starting this right now, but my feeling about level of trials is probably similar to a lot of you in that I feel like there you can't compare people's trials. What people I very much see that we're given different trials, and I think that it's been a really interesting journey for me in being so struggling so much physically. So, um, like, um, so being in a medical community, like in physical therapy, and watching the different people in physical therapy, or being in the hospital, or talking to different medical staff, and just kind of watching people's strengths and weaknesses, and in particular realizing like that the data that's gathered about health is so really is so inconclusive, because um, they're just using people and saying people respond this way. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if we could just do studies with the different aura families, like if you could divide up just even for the physical world, like so like reactions to medications, or level of, you know, just I would say it for the physical environment, body, and the body family, like strong physical constitutions. So if someone in the spiritual family is being put in the same group and being analyzed for their responses, they're going to have really different responses, but nobody's going to be dividing things up that way. So for me, of course, I would love to see different groups being compared. Like I always say, the physical environment family, they tend to just, their systems just eventually tend to start shutting down, but they go forever. So they're like, it's like a really strong tractor, and then eventually like the engine breaks, and parts just kind of start shutting down. And so really the physical environment family probably does live the longest. They're the hardiest, and probably body colors are right up there too. So don't think you're not going to live long if you're not in that family. I have no idea, but I know that their constitutions are stronger than other people's. So they're hardy, and if you think about it, they operate from that place, and a lot of their gifts are from that place. But so to put all of us in the same studies for health is kind of ridiculous. Or to go into emotional struggles and say that everybody deals with emotional stuff to the same degree, or that you can compare, or you can say that this sequela of symptoms means someone's depressed, or means someone is struggling more than somebody else. I'm like, goodness, the emotional family, mental, emotional, spiritual family, and even some of the spiritual colors, like to say that the way that they process emotions and the way it affects their life is going to be to a much greater degree than it is for somebody in some of the other families, because their gifts are there, they live there, but also their development and ability to move through emotional issues in a very healthy, thorough way is very high. So potential for emotional health is really high in those families as well. So just all of those things. I long for the day when my doctor knows my aura personality. How cool would that be? And for us to be able to say, and I know yours, and so I know where you're coming from, and it's okay that we are not speaking the same language, but we can honor and respect each other in our personalities, and realize like I'm coming from this place and you're coming from this place. So that would be such a dream, wouldn't it? Okay, so as far as like people having harder or more trials, I just if you know me, I just don't think that we can compare that. And it's kind of one of those questions that for me is kind of none of our business, because there's a grand orchestrator, there's a director of our lives in this existence, and how we interact with each other, what happens to us. And so God knows what we need. And I just don't like any kind of sense of like I'm sure you weren't doing this, but any sense of like pedestaling at all, like that somebody has harder trials and therefore they're a more, they're a greater spirit, or they're, I'm sure that's not what you were saying, but I just think we're being given exactly what we can handle. And even though I was actually thinking of this, and like today I was thinking, gosh, but it really does go right to that edge of feeling like this is far beyond what I can handle. So it's an interesting experience, this life, and um, it's been an interesting thing for me to experience. I'm like in the land of physical environment people around me, with farmers and ranchers and horsemen and women and right now, and there's a lot of sturdy constitutions around me, and you know there are people who've had like 4 heart attacks and they're out plowing their field the next day. I mean, I'm in a really like funny environment for me, because if I go at all into comparing, um, I could get in trouble really quick as far as my psyche and my ego is, thinking that what's wrong with me, and why don't I hold up like they do. So just kind of a thought about that, and I'll probably stop there. Okay, so something that's been on my mind, I'm looking at a new question. Something that's been on my mind is I've been feeling more like the spirit is strong, but the flesh is weak. And I have so many desires to do different things in my life. Oh, how much I relate to this. I've been feeling more like the spirit is strong, but the flesh is weak. And I have so many desires to do different things in my life. And then I don't end up doing anything because I just don't have the discipline or determination or whatever it is. I feel like I'm just tired. I feel like I let a lot of people down, and there's so many things that people expect from me, and I can't please most of the time. Me too. I don't. Somebody said totally agree with the question about me too. My goodness. So something with the with Oh, so hang on before I answer that question. So our roosters. So the last call dropped because the rooster showed up in my window. I have been getting so much symbolism lately. Peonies showed up 3 times on Sunday in different places. In the word peonies, that flower, and then anyway, so this is cool with the rooster too. So she says rooster medicine, so the rooster symbology is the enemy to evil spirits and ghosts. He also heralded Christ's birth. Cool. So also in being fertile, vigilant, and protector. Oh, that's so cool. Well, I have like 20 roosters that wander around my house. So we got good protection energy. Anyway, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so then so everybody likes this question. Something that's been on my mind, more like the spirit is strong, but the flesh is weak. So this is something that with aura personalities that I hope that we can all be changing our minds about how we show up in this world. So, and it's really, really ingrained in us that we're supposed to be a certain way, and that we're supposed to show up a certain way, and that certain things, certain activities mean we're a good person, and other activities mean we're a bad person. And so this is beyond morality. So morality is pretty clear. And for me, it goes beyond the golden, treat others as you would have them treat you. But to always show up in integrity. So, honesty, kindness, and respect is for me kind of like the platform to come from. And then how that looks to you, the way that your personality is going to do that is going to look different. But beyond that, like beyond just, basic laws of being a moral person of integrity, is you're going to show up in this world so differently. And your aura personality can be a really good guide for you. Such a good conversation, and this will be one of the podcasts that get launched. But such a good conversation about this with Yellow Violet the other day, but that that if you can get really clear for yourself, like, I have these traits I always bring to the table. I'm never not going to bring these traits to the table. Your first and second layer, those traits are always getting brought to the table. So obviously the strength side of them and the weakness side of them, but recognizing that I bring this. So even when you're kicking yourself for not getting it right, or you feel like you're underperforming based on somebody else's standard, you're always bringing these other really beautiful traits to the table. And I think it's really valuable to remember what those are. Because then you can stop yourself from thinking, but I'm supposed to be doing it like they do it, or I'm veering off. It's kind of veering off path when you spend a lot of time thinking I'm not doing it the way they're doing it. But it's one of our biggest temptations. I think a lot in life with the ego is calling it like a temptation to be different than you are, because anything that causes you to spend a lot of time not just living your truth is going to be a temptation, something pulling you away from bringing forth your light, something that's a distraction from living in integrity. So it's really kind of a thing to watch and realize, like, how much energy am I giving to feeling like I'm not good enough or I'm underperforming. And it is such a real temptation for me. But I really feel like a temptation is anything that keeps you from standing up in your light, because it's a distraction. I remember this got brought up in church, and I thought so clearly that a temptation for me is when I start thinking too much about my appearance. And I know I'm not alone in that, because I'm competing with a whole world of women who are doing that too, and I can feel it. We're, that focus on like that insecurity there, and it's understandable why why that happens, like the pressure for it, and realizing that it takes me away from standing in my truth. Now, your appearance can be a really important part of coming to terms with yourself and allowing your beauty to shine forth. So I'm not saying anything, don't think about your appearance, but I recognize, like, when I over focus on one area in my appearance, or I start thinking, like, feeling insecure about that, I think of that as a temptation, something that's pulling me away from showing up in my light, showing up in my integrity. So just some thoughts about that. Hopefully that answered you a little bit. Okay, so let's see. Oh, that's a totally different question. You guys that posted your questions on the before, jump those on here so that I can remember them, because they were really in-depth questions, and it's going to be hard for me to call them forward here. But if you just trigger me, I'll remember them. She said, "Wow, thank you, good advice." Okay. Oh, and I'm going to look at this too. As a member of the spiritual family, it feels exhausting to play by all the rules and expectations that seem silly and so shallow. I'm always fighting the strong desire to disconnect, to stay present. Whoa, right? So expectations that seem silly and shallow. So here's the tricky thing, is that what might feel shallow to us isn't. It's just a different playing field. And so that's part of honoring how other people show up and what's important to them. Super hard for me when people go into high task mode. I don't relate to high task. I'm not a tasker, but it's a critical part of our world. It's essential. And the reason I'll tend to disconnect from it is because I'll feel judged if I hang out there, and that I'm not performing at that same high activity level. And so a lot of times, like, our judgment will go because we feel lesser. And so then we judge someone to say, I'm just different then. And never when I'm saying things, assume that this is what you do. I have no idea what you do. But I know that's what I do. So when I will only get uncomfortable with somebody else's way of being when I feel any pressure for myself but ultimately I'm the only one giving myself pressure. And even if someone is giving me pressure, it's always up to me whether I take that pressure or whether I feel like I have to do that. Um, when I'm in a clear space, I know what I contribute to this world, and that I know that who I am has value, and that God needed me to show up the way that I am. Otherwise, He would have given me different layers in my aura. Like, He would have assigned different personality traits to me, but He assigned the ones that He assigned me, these to me. And they're low task. They are not highly task oriented. But I have to really watch not judging myself for that. So, you know, when you're in deep place, you're in deep place. That's going to be a writer or an artist or a philosopher. I even think of some of the prophets. Like, I love Isaiah. Don't think I understand everything by saying that, but I feel a spiritual replenishment when I read the words of Isaiah. Some of his words have been like saving, healing balm for me over the years. And it's just what the feeling that comes from them. And I always think, who was Isaiah? Like, he's just this guy sitting in the background, taking in the word of God all the time. What does that look like? He wasn't a tasker, he wasn't a tasker. He couldn't be. His gifts were different. So think about like what your gifts are, and realize like you can show up that way. And that is and assume that's what the world needs from you, because otherwise God would have assigned you different layers of light. So just really watch those comparisons. And thanks for that question, because it's a really, you said it's hard to stay present because you want to disconnect from that. So with you, I would say, find your passions and be comfortable in them, and then you'll be able to more easily sit in the presence of somebody else who's in task mode and just be in wonder at how that they operate there, and they contribute so much, like all that energy going into that, and they're supposed to. Otherwise they wouldn't be there. They're supposed to show up that way. So it's the physical manifestation, and the physical manifestation of things is just as, it's a spiritual gift too. So, I don't even know you yet, and you're asking these most questions, but thank you, Larianne. I feel like it's bringing forward some good stuff. Oh, hang on, I missed a question, I think. So what can I do to remove, okay, we're going deep. Is it Bree? What can I do to remove rebellious spirits that don't want to leave me physically? I think that we probably better spend a whole session on the other side and entities. I have a lot to say about that. Oh gosh, and how do I say this? It won't be enough, so I'm hesitating to say anything. What? Yeah, I feel like I won't be able to say enough. I'm just going to tell you something, and this is going to be really oversimplified, but for now, we can choose our focus. So when I experienced dark entities at their highest in my life, and I've experienced that periodically, but when I learned them and saw how they operate and had to battle that, what I did is I surrounded myself with images of Christ. So I literally, being in Utah was easy because I just went to Siegel Book. I can't remember if I went to Deseret Book too, but I went to Siegel Book because I knew there were tons of images of Christ. And I walked into that Siegel Book, and there were two missionary guys in there who, their name tag says the Church of Jesus Christ, and I know they're representatives of Christ. Like that's how they're stepping forward. And I remember walking in there, and they were just in there. It was like the middle of the day, and we were basically the only ones in there. And I just stood in there, and they were in there for a bit, and I just surrounded myself with images of Christ. And then I realized I needed to put some in my home too. And then music, and I just had to really counter. And there was more that I had to do. in that case, then maybe I can share that sometime. But um, entities are demanding. I'll just say that they're demanding, and and angels and dark angels, or whatever you want to call them, they're demanding. They have a mission, and you can fill your life with goodness and fill your focus with goodness, and there won't be room for the other to come in. They can there, but we all always do have dark energy that's trying to access us. The other side of the veil is very interested in those of us with bodies. You're very powerful because you have a body, and so just know that their interest level is really high. The angels the angels of light and angels of dark are very interested in us, but you are more powerful than they are, always, because you have a body. So just always remember that, and we'll try to maybe talk more about that one another time, because I feel like I have to be ready to go there. Okay, so let's see. Are there similarities in personalities and aura colors that are on the same end of the color spectrum, like warm shades versus cool shades? That's such a fun question, Kiara. I know I've thought of that in passing, like, but you have to remember that I don't see the light, so um, you know, that's not where I get, like, it's the vibe of them, so it'd be really fun for me to kind of color line them up, and see if the warm colors. That's such a fun question. We totally have to look at that. I like want to get some crayons out and just kind of color them all out and see if I know like what the differences of how they feel. And I think I'll do that. I think I'll have Matthias help me. Um, so this is back to what we were talking. And thank you for that. I beat myself up my whole life for wanting to create instead of clean. So I've denied that part of me for the most part. Darn, yeah. Yeah, gosh, you guys, if anything I know is to trust God, that you were assigned the layers of light, that you were assigned on purpose, and they're needed. And what's so tricky is that a lot of us, the traits that we were assigned that don't seem as practical, we also end up being in the pleaser end of things as part of our light. So that's a big part of our journey here, is embracing without embracing who we are and allowing our gifts to step forward without getting the validation from the outside that we so are wanting. So that's part of our learning curve. Okay. I love this so much, and it goes right along with our call. Yeah, thank you, Brandy. It did. So who are those with high task mode? Well, interesting you asked that, because violets can go into both. But violets can get things done better than like almost anybody, because there's an ambition that they have, and a purpose. Like Violet is one of the most complex personalities in the system by far. In that, also, even when I say that, it's like I can't attach fully, because I'm like, but then this part of them, it's a very complex, beautiful color of light. But so the physical environments are going to be very task oriented. The body family can be pretty task oriented. They need to see body family colors. They need to see results. So they like to have see things getting done. Physical environment is going to be probably top, but mental family is really task oriented also. Because but the mental family is going to be less concerned with, they want to think about things a lot. So they'll spend more time in the mental processes of things. So mentally they're getting things done, and then they'll actually get things done too. They're goal oriented too. All of the kind of the purposeful short-term goal people, which is the body and the physical environment, and then your long-term or future thinkers, which are visionaries, violets, and then your mental colors. So in the mental blends, you guys are goal-oriented future thinkers. So you guys have a plan. You have a plan going forward. So That's kind of how I would break it down. It doesn't mean the rest of you can't have goals, or that you don't have, or that you're not task oriented, but what your tasks will center around. So anybody with emotional, so the emotional, spiritual, mental, emotional, your tasks will almost always center around people. So they'll be very people centric. Whereas the physical environment and mental, they don't have to be people centric at all. They just are task oriented and getting things done. So because of the heart people, emotional, it's going to have a purpose, a very personal purpose in it. Okay. Okay, you guys are good. Magenta crystal, I'm agreeing. I'm having a hard time stepping into my business ventures. I'm self-sabotaging. Yeah. So just kind of think of that as, so that question, Diana, somebody who's a spiritual color, first, it doesn't mean you can't have a business. Obviously, you probably already have stepped into business ventures before, but just know that your pacing and the way business goes for you is going to look really different than somebody else's. And with your green combination, you're going to be able to dream big, meaning you're going to be able to see possibilities really well. And so that's going to feel frustrating when you can't just step into it, when it doesn't just happen. And then that spiritual part of you, that's that pacing, especially Magenta Crystal, man, your pacing is different than most people's. So you just are going to want to watch, figure out what you want your business to be, but be able to see yourself operating in that. Know yourself, know what feels good to you, know your ability to commit, know the time frame you're going to be able to have around yourself, for expectations for time or labor or heavy administration. You got to know yourself. You got to know what you're up to, what you're able to give, and whatever that is fine. And you can have a business based on your personality. Absolutely. I am a living example of that. So your business can look like you, and it should, and you'll be successful in it the more you can get it in alignment with how you are. But realize, I have to realize my business can only go as far as I can go, and that's okay. And I'm content with that. I don't have a lot of ambition, so I don't need it to be massive. I just need to be able to contribute the way I contribute, and it needs to fit my rhythm. Okay, so it's going to look different for everybody, the way we do business. So that's another area. Don't look at how anybody else does it. Trust how you do it. Okay, let's see. So, okay, we probably are getting there for time. We are. I got to go to physical therapy soon. Okay, so I had a question. So Liz, I'm going to have this be our last question, because I think I hit all the other ones. I had a question about my 17-year-old Indigo daughter. That's right. So I've been doing well with her for these past few years, keeping communication open, just struggling with knowing how much to intervene with her relationship with her boyfriend. He's so good for her. She's so happy with him around, but it's hard to keep them from being all over each other. The other side of this is she has a tendency to slip into depression where she really shuts everyone out, and I don't want to create a big wall between us. Oh, I feel like I just thought of my parents parenting me as an Indigo. I'm a crystal first, but as a teenager, I was pretty much in my Indigo all the time. So the deal with Indigos is that them finding companionship is everything to them. They are, it can almost become a single focus for them, because finding someone that they trust is them being in the world and then coming across someone and doing their whole trust thing of their radar thing, and then finding that, and then finding romance and intimacy connected in with that is huge for them. And they can be really standoffish. They feel like a better person when they have romance in their life. I probably never said that before about Indigos, but I know it. So that said, what's probably happening with her is that you're seeing that somebody said, did I want the Indigo in your teenage and young adult years? Cool. That said, yeah, so you're seeing that this boyfriend's good for her, but you're having to watch their boundaries with what you want for them as far as making choices in their sexuality, right? So Um, the other side is she's a tendency to slip into depression where she shuts everyone out, and I don't want to create a big wall between us. Yeah, that's the thing with indigos is kind of they decide when you're in or out. Um, and unfortunately, that's their decision. Like they make that decision. They're strong. That's probably a frustrating feeling. I mean, you're a you're a green amber and a crystal, and that's a really nice personality for an indigo. Um, Sorry, I want to make sure I'm touching this the way you need it. Keeping communication open, just struggling with knowing how much to intervene. Good for him, all over each other. Let's see, slipping depression. Okay, so hopefully I touched on that a little bit. I probably just validated what you already said. I'm like, yeah, you're right on the word. My feeling with teenagers that are new crystals and indigos is that um, keep keep your role as their parent because they need to know that there is an edge of things, and that's true in all parenting. Like kids need to know there's a boundary here, there's a boundary here, there's a boundary here, um, and that's the tricky thing in parenting nowadays is that we want to be so open to our kids that we're there. It's making everything overwhelming for them because if they don't feel a sense of boundary, it makes them feel completely overwhelmed. Like there's no perimeter on my life. So giving kids a perimeter in your home helps them have such a clear, helps them gauge their own emotions, it gauges how they feel about things because there's that consistency there. And we're a generation who's not great at that because we've gone too far of not having boundaries for our kids. But with the spiritual family, that's what I keep saying with those guys. The spiritual family is you want to give them clear boundaries. You want to let them know that this is the rule in our house, and so it's going to be a thing of being able to talk to her and allowing her to express what's happening for her, even in a physically intimate relationship. Like how fantastic would that be for a teenager to be able to talk to their parents about their feelings about that and what's happening for them, but also to know that my parents have a belief about this and they're clear about this, and you know, so it's a tricky balance of knowing how to do that. But with all indigos, anyone that's on the inside with them, which sounds like you want to maintain that, but without letting them have the feeling of that they're in control of whether you're in or out, or you just stay consistently. This is where I stand. This is how I love you. Like watching that, like pulling away or not trying to be too much. Like you just always want to bring you forward and say, I am here. I am your parent. I'm in this role for you. So just that clarity in that role, because she's going to launch. Indigos feel like little adults from when they're born. And that they have their own mind. They're making their own decisions. And so there's always that feeling in parenting them of like that they're not taking you seriously, or that they think they know more than you. They have that know-it-all energy. So they're hard to parent. I mean, I always say that indigos are hard to parent. But I also know they need parents, and that they want to feel that consistency. But then it's hard not to get hurt in that relationship with them, because it feels like when you're sensitive and you're going to feel when they go like 1,000 miles away energetically from you. So complex question. These are good questions. Oh, well, I'm talking about an indigo. I'm like, just my language changes, my thoughts change about because when I'm talking about parenting an indigo, that's a really different experience than parenting a yellow or parenting a green or something. Like it's a whole different experience. And so you want to always with an indigo, you don't even have to remember I'm parenting an indigo. An indigo is always blaring their indigo-ness at you. So yeah, And that's not true with all the other personalities. But an Indigo is always like, I am my own person. I think what I think, and I will make my decisions. And but then you feel that vulnerability in them and their need for connection. And she's gonna feel so good in that she has, she's got a boyfriend. Like that feels so socially normal, and she feels like I belong somewhere, and it's a big deal for them. Um, to feel all that, and then she's going to be confident in that, like I own this. This is who I am now. So there's a lot of, they're just complex. And ultimately you've probably always known with her that I have, um this child is my peer. She thinks she's my peer. She doesn't think I'm her parent. So what's going on down here in the feed? Let's see. Oh, I love it. This Indigo, she's all, I'm sorry, mom and dad. I know, that's how I feel to my parents. Well, not really to my dad. He was oblivious, but my mom. I'm like, oh, she was so sensitive, and I was so Indigo. Um, let's see. My kids are the same way as her kids. Yeah. So any of you guys that have kids in their first two layers that have either Indigo or one of the new crystals, you're definitely going to relate to a lot of what I just said. Um, let's see. That's really validating. I do get a sense that when I create a solid boundary for our home, she has more respect and appreciation for me. Yes. It's just tricky to keep that balance. It's tricky because your personality is way more easygoing than that. A green amber crystal, you're just like, let there be flow, and I'm gonna go do my thing. You guys do your thing, and then just like that more emotional sensitivity of the crystal. So it's hard. It's hard for when I live in my crystal. Like that's hard for me too, because you just want to be this sensitive soul and just kind of like let there be a lot of flexibility and everything and flow right in the moment. And then you have these other strong personalities coming in that kind of hold you to a like wake you up, and like you have to make a decision or show up in a way for them because they're asking that of you, basically. So yeah, so tricky. Okay, complex, thank you. Okay, blaring their indigo-ness at you. So true. Like a freaking foghorn, you guys, I know. I can't tell you how incredible it is just to hear you talk about indigos. Good. Okay. Let's see. Tracy, my boys, a green amber crystal, is the coolest. They are. Thank you what you said about my or personality. So validating for me as well. I felt this was payback from God for my indigo-ness 20 times over. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's disconnect. I'm gonna try to. I have physical therapy today, which start to finish ends up taking it's like a 4 hour experience for me. So I'll be a little disconnected today, but I want to try to get on another deal to do some more what do you call it, podcast things. Anyway, so I'll do another podcast offer either today or tomorrow. I'll really try. Just bug me if I haven't done it publicly. Don't send me private messages. Those of you who have, no, I don't answer them. I just can't. There's too many, and I need people with your questions. They need to kind of get put on this page because, or else do a call with me because I don't have the strength or the personality to be a high communicator on a really regular basis. So, um, yeah, but if you pay for time with me, love to give it to you or put it on here and somebody will answer you, or sometimes I'll get on here and answer it. So, and there I am. Okay, so have a really great day, and I'll get that on there, and hopefully this was some good food for thought. Thanks, everybody. Namaste.